I just kept asking myself, like, what did I do for me to deserve all of this from God? I left Afghanistan thinking he hated me. There was a moment that right after I heard mortars were dropping, and I was like, just bring me home. And he didn't. So I left, and I was like, hey, he don't even want me. I was in a pretty depressed place. And part of that journey was to try and find what all this really meant for me.
Mike, thank you so much, dude. We are very excited to chat with you. We have to, we definitely want to shout out Jenny, because Jenny's our realtor that helped us sell our house back in Utah. And she referred Mike out to us. She also trains at Keith's Place and everything. Thought that he would be a great fit on the podcast. So Jenny, what's up? Thank you very much. If he's a complete up, it's on you. It's not on us, but I'm sure he's going to do great. We're really excited to chat with him. So Mike, you have just started jiu-jitsu. I thought this would be a great place to start, right? You said that you had been training for like the last, just a little bit, right? 6-8 months, something like that?
Yeah, something like that, yeah.
At least less than a year, right?
Yes, for sure, less than a year.
What is I want to know why you got into it, and then let's do your least favorite thing about it so far, and then your most favorite thing about it so far.
Okay, so let's see. What got me into it? I'm really kind of into fitness, really kind of into anything that keeps me active, keeps me moving, and I guess from my time in the military, I've always kind of had an interest in that kind of stuff. So got into it just to get active, because I'm getting 36, and plus my daughter is reaching that age that she's going to start dating here in the next couple of years, and so I guess there's always that protective father in me that wants to make sure that people are scared to do anything with her, you know. And then let's see, favorite thing. I love that it's new. I've been a therapist for a long time, but I love that it's something I got to figure out. And even when you know it, you'll roll with someone else and it won't work that same way. So it's always new. There's no way you'll really be an expert in it. And that kind of intrigues me. The worst thing, probably that my body can't go as much as I want to go. That's probably the worst part.
We unfortunately can't relate to that.
Nope.
We are spring chickens, and we get to roll as hard and as often as we like.
I literally have done jiu-jitsu like 6 times this week already. Plus, I've worked out twice, 2 other times. I've taught a couple classes. So, and I'm older than you, Mike, so you should really figure that out.
No, I'm in the same boat as you, dude. I can't roll as much as I used to. It's too hard for me. I've learned over the years that if I try to, then I just end up hurting things and can't roll at all anymore. So
it could be the pickleball.
It's not the pickleball.
I think it's the paddle sports.
Pickleball is king. If you have what's questions for you? Do you have any questions we can answer for you when it comes to jiu-jitsu?
Let's see.
What's your favorite submission?
Let's see. I'm kind of growing fond of the Kimura, because even when the submission fails, it kind of sets you up into like 3 or 4 other moves. So I really kind of like the Kimura. But I'm trying to remember the name of the one I'm working on. It's either, I guess it's an arm triangle and the north-south choke are the two that I'm trying to get the shoulder angle down so it actually chokes them.
It's a good submission.
They're solid submissions.
Yeah.
Can I ask, Mike, how much, if you don't want to tell me, that's okay. How much do you weigh?
Today I weigh 212.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, that's Kimura territory. Big guys tend to like the Kimura a lot more because we are big and we just do what we want. And the head and arm triangle. Listen, I'm a big fan of the head and arm triangle and the Kimura. I don't like the north-south choke, but it's just not a position that I train. So,
Ben's go-to position is, oh my God, it just slipped my brain. It's half guard.
Yeah.
Hell, I couldn't even think of it.
Half guard is where I start my
that's where you go to
my
work.
journey. my goal is to get to half guard, and then I have an entire sequence that I build out. All roads lead to belly down, and the goal is to get you there and then murder you.
I am a side mount practitioner. It is my favorite position. It's where I go to. It's the place that I'm trying to get to and then just stay as long as possible. I just like to hang out there in side mount, just patiently waiting, making their life as miserable as possible until they just eventually give me something to submit them with.
That's because you weigh more than 200 pounds.
It's because I weigh more than 200 pounds. It's a good position.
It's a great position.
Doesn't matter how much you weigh. It's a great position.
It does matter how much you weigh.
No,
if you weigh
doesn't.
130 pounds.
It's a great position no matter what.
No.
Yeah,
No.
Don't listen to him.
Don't listen to
Mike.
you. No.
Go to side mount.
Oh, yeah, because he weighs more than 200 pounds.
You're going to be able to do a lot of work in side mount. It's a good big man position.
Yeah.
So, Mike, let's get into it a little bit. I want to hear about, like, you're a therapist. You spent some time in the military. You've only got one daughter, or do you have multiple kids?
I have 2 kids, but only one daughter. I have a 14-year-old daughter and a 10-year-old son.
Okay. Where would you like to start, dude? Because I really want to learn about, I know that we talked a little bit prior to this and everything like that, and I do want to get into like masculinity and therapy and some of those aspects of what you've seen over the years of working with men. But I would really like to learn a little bit more about you and kind of your path to get you to that place.
Yeah.
So it's up to you. We love going all the way back into childhood. We love talking about all of the things that have kind of shaped and molded us and affected us over the course of our lives. So if you're comfortable, we can start there. But if you'd rather, we can start wherever you'd like.
Yeah, I'm an open book. We can start anywhere. So if we're gonna start from early life, I was born in West Valley. I had one older brother. He was 2 years older than me, and then I had 2 half sisters. I have a sister with a different mom, and then a sister with a different dad. Didn't really have a relationship with my older sister, but my older brother, younger sister, and I lived together for all of our childhood, basically. My parents were together when we first when I was born. Somewhere after maybe about 8-ish years old, my mom and dad separated, and he kind of moved away, and then I just stayed with my mom, with my brother and my sister. Early on, like my need to kind of protect this piece of me that has me moving into jiu-jitsu, joined the military. That side of me kind of showed up when I was 8. Something tragic happened to my sister. She either fell down the stairs or was pushed down the stairs and hit her head on a metal toolbox at the bottom of the stairs, and got a traumatic brain injury. And so ever since then, from 8 and older, she was developmentally delayed. My mom, who had her own struggles, couldn't really take care of her very well. So my brother and I had to kind of step in, help out. She's still alive, and she'll probably watch this video, so I won't tell you all the stories of what happened as a kid. But from there, like as I grew up, my brother had what did he have? He had some kind of dwarf syndrome, so he was shorter than most people. So all throughout high school, he was kind of picked on. So I wasn't muscular, but I was tall and scrappy, and so I just kind of spent a lot of time around him. He was stronger than I was, but we just kind of clung together that way. My stepdad came into my life, and somewhere in there, and he really started showing me what like men are supposed to be like, and what that looks like. I can remember a time, like anytime I did something my mom didn't really like, she would take away food, or there was one time she got a new bullwhip, and she whipped me with a bullwhip. And then my stepdad came around, and he seen what was going on. Not the bullwhip situation, but he heard my mom telling me I wasn't going to eat and I had to go do stuff. And he kind of stepped between us and he's like, no, here you go. He handed me $20 and he said, Mike, you leave. I'll take care of this. And I went and got a meal. And there was no yelling. There was no screaming. He was very honorable, very respectful in that interaction. And something about that moment kind of caused me to really pay attention to how he was showing up. My biological dad, he's still alive. He also might see this. somewhere throughout my childhood, like my mom told me he died, and so I kind of grieved him when I was young. And then one Christmas Day, he showed up with a bunch of gifts, and my mom like crushed him on the porch and like made a big deal about it. But as I was seeing that, my dad and I talked about it later, but he remembers the crushing of the presents, but something tells me he doesn't know that whole interaction for me was my dad, who was dead, came to life and brought me gifts. And I think I was like 10 or 11, maybe 12 years old. And then he just left my life again and didn't really come back till my brother died. My brother died in 2009 in Afghanistan.
Mike, I want to push pause real quick.
Yeah.
Okay.
I can talk all day.
Holy hell, man.
Yeah. No, there's so much here, dude. There's so much that I want to ask about because, like, I'm not a therapist. You're the therapist, but there's a lot of things that you've shared up until this point, and then you're like, my brother died, and I'm not laughing about that in any shape, right? That's not a joke or anything like that. But it's like, okay, slow down a little bit because it's like there's a lot to unpack in this space. Yeah, how did that affect you? Like the whole thing of like your mom saying your dad's dead and then he comes back into your, like that just seems bananas to me. I know that at the time, I'm sure it was all sorts of confusion and processing as a kid and not really understanding it and trying to put all those pieces together. But how have you put that together since then? Like how have you unpacked that and repacked that? And how has that, not just shaped you as a man today, but like what's the ongoing journey of unpacking what that was and what that did to you and how that's affected you over the course of your life? Because that seems really, really significant.
Yeah. So I think there was definitely some time there that I didn't really know what to do with it. And my mom kind of pushed me through it a lot. A lot of the times when I was like, hey, like what's going on here? She would, excuse me, she'd kind of refocus on like chores or something I needed to do and just kind of got me back into doing stuff. Like there wasn't really a space for me to talk about it or really share. So a lot of the unpacking of that happened a lot later in life. There was, I guess, some dynamics there is my mom never said it around my stepdad, but she would always talk about like some kind of, I can't remember how she phrased it. So from my current knowledge, I'd say there was some kind of masculine tension between my stepdad and my biological dad. That like if I talked about either of them around the other, that I was doing some kind of harm. And so there was also that kind of hesitancy to really work through it as a child. So a lot of it showed up. A lot of the unpacking happened a lot later.
Yeah. I'm curious because like that dynamic right there that you just mentioned about, the tension between the dynamic of trying to even just speak about those two men in your life in the same space and time together, like acknowledging it. I don't have a stepdad. I've just got my biological father. My mom never remarried after they got divorced. But my son, when I met my wife, Stephanie, she had 2 kids. I had 2 kids. So we blend our families together. And at the time, my son was 6 years old. So ever since then, I have been the major male role model in his life. I've been his father figure. I adopted him a few years back. He is my son, right? But I've always felt that in a sense coming from him, where it's his struggle to try to communicate, I think, whether it's conscious or subconscious, that whole dynamic back and forth, right? Where talking about his dad, talking about me, talking about this, just the uncomfortableness of that space. But I'm curious, again, it's just like, I know the unpacking part of it and putting pieces together is later on in life, but what have you learned? Like, what's come from that? What's really kind of affected you and shaped you think?
Before unpacking it, like what sticks with me from back then? Is that what you're
Yeah,
asking?
not necessarily from back then, but like, what have you learned from it today? Like, what are some of the pieces, how have you seen, maybe this is a great way to frame it, is how do you feel like that has shaped you and a man both positively and negatively? Like the whole thing with your biological dad and what your mom said and everything, but then also just that dance back and forth between those two men in your lives. Today's episode of Brave Men Dare is brought to you by Wooly.
Have you ever just put a shirt on and just been like, ugh, what the hell is on my body? Or the worst thing is you're like, it's JV. A lot of those materials just have a lot of garbage, chemicals, and just trash and stuff like that. One of the most comfortable shirts that I've actually put on is this one that I'm wearing right now. It's wonderful. It's like being hugged by a kiss of wool. Can I get this in a polo?
Wooly uses merino wool in all of their clothes. And if you haven't ever tried merino wool, you really need to give it a shot. It's a natural fiber that actually is going to whisk moisture away from your body, which helps keep you cool and dry.
And if you're a guy on the move, there's nothing better than being cool and dry.
I've switched out all of my boxers. Now I'm only wearing Wooly.
There's a great joke in here about a woolly mammoth.
Right now, listeners of this podcast can save 15% on anything at Wooly. Head over to the link in our description and be sure to enter in promo code BRAVE to save that 15%.
Wooly, more wool, less plastic.
Well, I guess early on, I kind of felt men were pretty unstable. That they weren't. I don't believe this now, but back then I was cautious around men or boys. A lot of my friends in high school were all women. Got along a lot better with women than I did men. And then kind of led into some pretty unhealthy relationships where I was trying to kind of highlight my differences from men, which then I was kind of in denial of my own masculinity early on, and kind of stuffing a lot of stuff in that way. After unpacking, though, I kind of started to cultivate relationships with men as well. And now that I think about it, Jiu-Jitsu is probably a big part of that. Before Jiu-Jitsu 8 months ago, like I couldn't even, I think I had one guy friend before Jiu-Jitsu. And now, I mean, I'm not really that social of a person, so now I got a bunch of guy acquaintances.
Got a bunch of guys that just want to like sweat and cuddle you.
Yeah, one extreme to the other, right?
There you go.
I think oftentimes when it comes to being a father myself, a lot of the things that happen between me and my kids, like I do filter through that where I wonder what kind of father they're going to view me as later down the road, like what really shows up. And there was obviously a lot of tension between my mom and dad before they got separated, so I remember all that. And like without really sharing what all that was, like I also get kind of aware and put extra thought into how I'm showing up for my wife, and to make sure that I'm honorable in all the things I do.
How do you feel as a dad today? Like I know that because we talk about it all the time of not just our relationships with our parents and our fathers and everything like that, but the subject of like how our childhood, how those relationship dynamics that we observed, witnessed, and watched, as well as kind of how we've navigated over the course of our lives, how it's playing out in these relationships that we have with our kids today. Ben and I both have kids, and it's just like looking at that dynamic of, those early relationships with mom and dad, especially I think oftentimes as men, I mean, they both affect us obviously, but it's like that relationship with dad is so pivotal in so many different ways. And then you fast forward and now you're experiencing it as a father. What has that looked like for you?
I really like the question. Today, I would say my relationship as a father is pretty solid. I think both my kids and I, like, we really we have an open relationship. They'll come and tell me what's going on. We're pretty engaged. They know that I'm from the lane of like I'm gonna take care of them, and so of course my daughter don't tell me about the boy she has a crush on, but she also is very open with all the others, with all the other stuff. Early on, as a parent, as a father, there's there's a lot of things that when I was in denial of my own masculinity, so early on when my wife and I first got married, my daughter was born in 2010. We got married in 2009. So early on, I was in denial. And being in that denial place where you're just trying to push it away and not appear to be like all the other men, I was kind of angry. I was angry a lot. And I remember one time, it was like the middle of the night. I think I had college the next day or something. And my daughter was in the room and she was crying. And I can't remember how old she was. Maybe like 2 or 3 years old. It was before my son. So it was just her. And I remember like going in and like flinging the door open and I yelled at her and I was like, shut your mouth. It's time to go to. And ever since then, like it was maybe 2 or 3 months ago, I just kind of, no, it wasn't 2 or 3 months ago. It's like a year and a half ago. I heard some weird noise coming from my daughter's room. And so, of course, now being the protective father, I was like, hey, what's going on? And I went in and she was having a panic attack about crying. And that really opened my eyes to kind of the way I was showing up, the way I was showing up for her earlier in her life. And that's when I really made it my life's mission to be better.
I've totally opened the door and been like, it's like, what do you like?
Right, it's such a dad thing, dude.
Yeah.
There's so many times where it's like, I told you it's bedtime. It's time to go to bed. And it's,
That's not what I sound like when I do it. Just super honest here. Yeah. I mean, it's so, and Mike, I've definitely gone through some of this myself as I'm always reevaluating like how my interactions with my parents and stuff like that, and with my dad and my mom, and then individually after divorce, about the same age, right? You really led into, I'm not going to lie, man. You totally, like, you came in and I was like, all right, this is going to be super fun. I'm going to talk to Mike. This will be fun. And you like led into all that. And I was like, so the question of like, oh, like, so your parents got divorced, or how did you feel about your parents getting divorced and why was it your fault? So that's not a good spot for this one right now. But that's me not asking the joke, right?
not asking the question.
Not asking the question. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I definitely spend a lot of time. My wife and I talk about it, like how I interact with my kids, right? And how I'm.
Hold on a minute. Because that was one thing that stood out to me too, was all three of our parents were divorced, and essentially we were raised by our moms for, I mean, my parents didn't get divorced until I was 14, but my dad was pretty much non-existent for a lot of my childhood anyhow. So it's not like he was really present and around anyhow.
Yeah.
And do you think that, like, do we all have some sense of like it was our fault that our parents got divorced? Did we internalize it in some way? Like, raise your hand, I guess, if you feel like it was your fault a little bit.
Yeah,
I
like, now granted, like,
if you can't see everybody, Mike's raising his hand as well. Mike's, or Ben's the odd one out. You don't think it was your fault in any way?
No, I mean, so like this is where, like, I know, looking back, my dad, like, even at a young age, I understood, like, at about the age of 8, my dad was an alcoholic, right? My dad was a drug user. My dad would, and I could even understand, my dad was the one who worked. My mom stayed at home with me, my 2 sisters, my half brother. And then my dad would come, like, we all knew he got paid on Friday, and we wouldn't see him till Sunday night because he would go on a bender and spend most of his paycheck, and then we didn't have electricity.
Yeah.
Right. And it was like, so, like, when my mom was yelling at him, I was like, no, I know why. It's because, like, you drank all of your paycheck and you're the only paycheck in the house. Right. So I never really went through the, like, mom hates dad and threw the ashtray at his face because of me. It was mom threw the ashtray at dad because he's an idiot. Right. Because we don't have electricity and we're eating fucking gravy and chipped beef over bread.
Yeah.
For the 18th time in a row. Right.
Yeah.
And so I never felt bad. Like, I still love my dad, right? Like, so that's where we're all a little different in that too, right? Like, I still, like, even when my parents split, like, my dad showed up to all my football games, took me to wrestling practice, showed up to my track meets. Like, I spent the weekends with him. I stayed with him long times. Like, we went camping. We did a lot of things, but my parents were split. And my dad was still an alcoholic and still a drug user, right? And I just got to hang out with him.
Yeah.
Yeah,
my dad was not around at all after the divorce. So I didn't get to spend a lot of time with him.
Mike's dad died.
No, Mike's dad didn't die.
I know that. That was the...
Jesus, dude.
It's Friday. I'm sorry, I've had a long week.
Why do you think that is the tendency of kids to take that blame on during divorce? Why do you think that happens? Because I know that we're not uncommon in that.
Yeah. So kids are generally very egocentric, 12 and younger. So egocentric means they think the world's all about them. I
think we have to bump that number up. I think it's probably 45 and younger. It takes people a little while to get over that the world's all about me thing, right? But okay, keep going. Sorry.
Yeah, you're good. If you want to know what that is after 12, that too exists. But generally egocentric, 12 and younger. So when something's happening, it's kind of that default place to kind of filter it through. What did I do? But also, if that's the question you're asking, you'll find a lot of evidence to support it, right? Like, even if your parents are like, hey, you know what? Like, it's not you, I just hate your mother, and it's not you, and I just hate your dad. Like, you're still sitting there, and it's like, wait, is it because I didn't do the dishes? Am I putting my socks in the wrong place? Like what am I doing to cause this if it happens younger than 12? If the separation happens after the age of 12, like, it does create different issues, but it's not generally through that lens that it was my fault. And then in other situations, they tell you that because they don't want to take any burden or responsibility for that. My mom, we found out each of our baby books. I think we were like 10 or 11 when we found them. My brother's, he was the firstborn. His was completely filled out, had like first day of school pictures and like first haircut, holding on to this strand of hair. My 4-year younger sister, hers was completely filled out, and mine was there. First page, born, my weight. Second page, a letter saying, I'm really disappointed you're not a girl. You caused our divorce. Your dad didn't think you was his. So, like sometimes they'll just say it, but of course my mom had her own issues. It was sad at her funeral. We did a celebration of life, and I stood up and I was like, hey, can anyone tell me any good stories about my mom? And it was like silence for like 5 minutes. And I was like, well, thanks. Go ahead and get back to drinking.
Especially after opening up and you're like, oh wow, look at your baby book, and you open this up and you're like, I wish you would have been a girl, you ruined everything. You're like, well, that's so good. I'm so excited that we've come across these wonderful books. I'm gonna go drink for a while, right? Or something.
Yeah.
When did your mom pass away?
2016, I want to say.
Okay.
It was a drug overdose, from what I understand.
Okay. Did you have much of a relationship with her at that point, or?
No, we kind of had a falling away in 2009. 2009, like everything changed in 2009. Yeah.
And that's when your brother passed away?
Yeah. There's if you're ready for the tragic story to continue,
let's do it, dude.
Ooh, I'm sweaty.
Cool. So let's see. My brother was in the Army and I was in the Marines, and my brother deployed to Iraq in 2009, and then our stepdad died in May of 2009. He was, I guess, he inhaled a chip and it went into his lung. So then it festered, and then he just lost oxygen and died. So then my brother came back from Iraq for the funeral and then went to Afghanistan right after. So he was home for like a week, and then they sent him to Afghanistan. And then I followed him to Afghanistan. So we both were there. He was coming down to resupply our unit, and on the way, he ran over an IED. So we ended up bringing him back out, and that was in July of 2009. When I got back home, my mom like really got into alcohol. Like she had a history of like other drug use. I think, well, I can't remember exactly what she was using, but she was using other stuff long ago. But then she got into alcohol. And then, under the influence of alcohol, she chased my younger sister down the street with a pistol and an axe. And so I had to get out of the Marine Corps so I could go take care of my sister. And in that whole interaction, my mom and I became estranged so that I could keep my sister and my kids safe at the time. So we didn't really have much of a relationship from 2011. She came in a few times, but she couldn't really stay healthy enough to be around for long. So, yeah.
Who were you with in the Marines? I'm sorry, that's a stupid question. We just went over this huge traumatic thing.
No. It's a great place.
And I'm
it's hard, dude, because it's like, what do we, there's so much there, Mike. Like, genuinely, I mean, there's, we always, not always, but I tend to think about the experiences that we have in life are, obviously the experiences that shape and mold who we are and things, right? And I mean, you've turned all of this, I don't want to say all of this pain and all of this suffering and things like that, but it sounds like you've had quite a life, dude. Like, I know that there's going to be a lot of stuff in there that, there's obviously good, there's joy, you've got kids, you're married, you got a relationship, all of those kind of things. But transmuting all of that pain into the space that you're at today is something that I want to talk about. But at the same time, like, how did you find your way through some of these things, especially that time period, man? Going through that experience with your brother, I can't even imagine what that would be like.
Yeah. So each stage kind of had something else that I turned to. As a kid in high school, I got into drama, and so I was on stage a lot. I spent a lot of time kind of dissociating. When I'd step on stage and I'm playing the guy who's on the Titanic and he's playing his violin and singing a song as the ship's crumbling, it's like, okay, like, I'll just be in this life for a moment, I just detach from it all to just experience different lives. My senior year, I was Dracula. So,
I mean, you got the lead role, right? That's a big deal. Way to go, dude.
Yeah, thanks. So acting was a big part of my younger life. I always kind of pretended. Even as I was Dracula, I was like, I wonder if Dracula's dad showed up, So that was a lot of what did it then. Through the military, through that time in 2009, my wife was definitely my rock through the whole thing. So another comical story. I met my wife when I was 12, right? We were playing hacky sack. I'm assuming you both know what hacky sack is.
Yeah.
Hold on. We got to push pause. We got a fellow footbagger in the house.
Yeah, that's right.
Ben comes from a long line of footbags.
Yeah.
So
a lot of time hacking the sack. All right. Did I tell you I have one?
Did you find it?
Yeah, I've got one, and I literally pull it, and it's sitting on my desk or behind me in my office, and I like sit there, and every time I look at it, I was like, I'm going to grab this one day and come over. And before we film an episode, I'm just going to like do some, right? And you can film. I'll basically do a jig.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, that needs to
like
happen.
Like Dracula.
Okay, so you got into hacky sack.
Yeah. And I was pretty good at it. But,
I mean, gauntlet.
Ben apparently competed. Didn't you compete?
I did compete.
Ben went to footbag competitions.
It was one.
Okay, just one. He had special shoes made though. His mom made him some shoes for.
No, they're not. They're just a shoe that's more effective for the footbagging.
What were they called again?
Rod lavers. They're Adidas Rod lavers. They're green. Yeah. I still see them occasionally because you could still buy them, and I'm like.
You got to get some.
Rod Laver was a famous tennis player.
Okay.
Why don't you know that?
I should know that.
You should know that.
I should know that. Anyways, Mike, this is about you. Go ahead.
Yeah, we're going to send you some.
Rod Laver's
You
coming
know
in the
that?
mail.
You do tennis?
I did. Yeah. I played tennis in high school, but
Oh, okay.
yeah,
Okay.
I also did drama too.
Yeah. I met my wife when I was 12 playing hacky sack in a backyard. Someone knocked it over the fence. And so I jumped the fence to go get it, right? But then I get my pants caught on the top of the fence and completely tear this huge hole in my pants. Like it was going down just below my knee, like this massive hole. So I gave him back the hacky sack and uh, I just always have to say, like she must have liked what she's seen if she stuck around so long.
It's like, man, look at that calf muscle. This 12-year-old calf muscle. Woo, doggy.
If you guys, I
Yeah.
mean, you've known her since then, but were you guys, I mean, when did you start dating? And I'm assuming it's not from that point
Yeah.
forward, right?
Right. We started dating at my stepdad's funeral, so May of 2009.
Okay.
Yeah. And then we got married right after my brother's funeral, so August 15th of 2009. So we dated for a solid, what is that, 3 months?
Nothing like
Yeah.
some trauma bonding.
Because it terrifies me a little bit that might be there, but
Listen, as somebody who's done some trauma bonding, I totally understand.
I'm happily in a 13-year relationship with somebody that I trauma bonded with, so
There you go.
it definitely is doable.
we've been together ever since. So that's like 16 years, I want to say, and she's the best thing that ever happened to me. So, but she helped me through it all. But there was a few spaces that I got to a pretty dark place, and now her and I get a laugh about. There was one time I invited everyone in my platoon over. First time my wife met him, house full of men, getting drunk, and I'm passed out in the middle of the floor, holding a camp chair, caressing it, saying, "Oh, Katie." So it was.
I could just imagine like the young Marine Mike, right? With because I was in the Marines from 04 to or from 5 to 14. But I have been the guy who's shown up to the young Marines, just got married, first time everybody's meeting the wife, and we're all like, we're going to ruin this. It's going to be the worst, right? And then just to watch the guy get super drunk, or somebody looks at somebody and be like, "Oh, you're vegan." And she's like, "Yeah, hey, let me get a bite of your cheeseburger." You're not vegan, like.
Take us up into the point where you start going down the path of becoming a therapist. Because honestly, Mike, you need it. Like, if I was to just hear your life story, your experiences, if I didn't know that you were a therapist, I'd be like, dude,
brother, you
got to get into
therapy.
some fucking therapy. Okay. You're painting a picture of somebody that definitely needs to sit in a therapist's office. So I'm very, very glad that you've gone through the process of getting to this point in your life. But
Well, just because he's a therapist doesn't mean he goes to therapy.
that's true. But I mean, at some point, you've got some level of
Yeah.
training.
If you
and
read the book, you're
understanding.
like, oh yeah, okay, well that makes sense. But
I
whatever.
think there's more than just reading a book. I think they probably got to do some practicals. They got
Things
to
like
do
clinicals
something.
or something like that,
Yeah,
right?
I'm sure there's something in there,
It's
right?
really like pass fail though.
Mike, this is not the podcast for information. I think
Sorry.
we've proven that over and over again. We're not the go-to source for much of anything other than the stuff that comes out of our mouth. But let us know what it looks like. What does that path look like? Like, what took you to that place where you decided, okay, this is what I want to do now. This is what my passion is.
When I got out of the Marines in 2011, and to answer your other question, I was in the 2nd LAR Battalion out of Camp Lejeune, North Carolina.
Okay.
But when I got out, I was obviously going through it all. So I went up to the VA, was kind of doing some work up there. Ran into a social worker up there that just kind of like he held space for me, that I could just be. And I think the fact that he was a dude probably played a factor in my ability to kind of be there, because a lot of the women I knew at the time were like, they were very empathetic. I needed them. Nothing wrong with women, and I didn't quite know what life looked like for me. So there was this whole shaking of my entire foundation. Everything kind of disappeared. There was a period of time there that I couldn't remember anything. Like I had to go to speech therapy to relearn how to think and remember things. So I couldn't hold a job, couldn't really do much, just because of all the stuff that kind of came together.
This episode of Brave Men Dare is brought to you by Heritage Still. Look, it's a brand new year, and you're probably like everybody else, including Ben and I, trying to get healthy, trying to do what you need to do so that you can create the life that you want to create. Why not upgrade those old non-stick pans that you've been carrying around since college? They're killing you. And instead swap them out with some Heritage Still titanium stainless steel ironclad 5-ply beautiful lifetime warranty cookware. Heritage Still is committed to can't say committed it this morning. They are committed to sustainability, and they use environmentally conscious practices in the production of all of their cookware. Heritage Still was started over 40 years ago. It's a family-owned business right here in Tennessee. If you're a fan of cooking, if you consider yourself a chef, hey chef, thank you chef, then you need to pick up some stainless steel titanium Heritage Still pans. Listeners of Brave Men Dare can save 10% right now and head over to heritagestill.us/brave. Enter promo code BRAVE and save 10% on your next order. Heritage Still, chef-grade cookware for less.
And so for me, that journey was really about trying to find what it all meant for me. There was a whole spiritual or religious side of this. Like, as you've heard most of my story, like by the time I got to that point, I just kept asking myself, like, what did I do for me to deserve all of this from God? You know, I left Afghanistan thinking he hated me. Like there was a moment that right after I heard mortars were dropping, and I was like, just bring me home, and he didn't. So I left, and I was like, hey, he don't even want me. Like I was in a pretty depressed place, and part of that journey was to try and find what all this really meant for me, right? So I'll take you along the journey, but the biggest thing that really connected for me when I enlisted, I planned on being a lifer. I planned on being in the Marines forever, or until I died. It was going to be one of the two. And when I left, I had to figure it all out. So I was talking to this guy, social worker, and well, I didn't even tell you what I figured out. So I'll just take it back down the road. So I'm talking to this guy, social worker, and he's like, like there's a reason you're still alive. There's got to be a reason you're still alive. And I think he said that because I thought God rejected me, but the end of the road is still the same. There's a reason I was here. And now that I look back, I've been a therapist since 2015. My life experience put me in a place that I really get to show up for people. That the people that come in this room, that spend time with me, like it's not just a vain, hey, I think I can guess, or I think I might understand. Like I can relate to a lot of that stuff, and I think that helps. And again, looking back at it, if I would have stayed in the Marines, if everything would have played out the way I wanted it to, there's a lot of people I've helped over the last 10 years or so that I wouldn't have been able to do if I didn't have the life I had. And so I'm just grateful for the shit road I was on. That really brought me to this place because people really kind of need it.
It's like I said, I got the sweats. You're literally you're talking about stuff that I'm like, when I joined, I was like, yeah, I'm just going to do this for like, this is what I'm going to do. This rings, this
Right?
sounds right. Right.
Yeah.
And like, cool. And as I got, even as my first couple of years, I was like, yeah, this is what I'm going to do with the rest of my life. When I got out, totally lost at the VA on 20 different prescriptions, my now wife calling me on 10 o'clock in the morning, like, get out of bed. And I'm like, what's the point? Right.
Yeah.
Mortars coming in and literally just rolling over and just be like, yeah, man, whatever, dude. Like, I don't care. Like, if you're going to do it, let's make it hurt. Right. Like, let's get this done. But coming out, just being lost. I don't know what I'm going to do. And now getting to the, I'm not a therapist. I play one on TV, but on YouTube, I really look at it, and it's the relationships and the people that I've had an opportunity to have an effect on, right? Like it's co-workers, team members, there are a dozen people that are walking around today that I have helped lose over 100 pounds, right? Yeah. Like that is like, those people probably will live substantially longer because of that. Mm-hmm. And that's a huge impact. But at the time, right, you're like, he forgot about me.
Yeah.
He didn't want me.
Yeah. Yeah. And
what made you decide to go into therapy?
That social worker at the VA. Like after I kind of started reclaiming my life and kind of taking ownership in the life I was going to live, just kind of looking back on how I got to that point, it just felt right. So I did it.
Did you like have this moment where you're like, did you like wake up, or were you like eating eggs and ham or something and be like, I'm going to be a social worker, or I'm going to be a therapist? And did you look at your wife and be like, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to be a therapist. And was she like, yeah? Or was she like, no?
Nope, didn't really play out like that. Like I started going to college to, I think I started in like mathematics or like psychology just because the mind really, really intrigued me, but it wasn't really going to be a path. And then there was a voc rehab guy that I met with, and he's like, well, I mean, like keep traveling this road. Like if you're wandering in the dark, you're never gonna get there. So where are you trying to get? And so having a conversation with him, I told him I wanted to get my doctorate in psychology, and he's like, but why? And I was like, well, I want to sit down. I want to talk to people. That's what I want to do. And he's like, then don't get a doctorate, get a master's. And then that's the day I went home, and I was like, hey, guess what, babe? Cutting 9 years out of college. I'm going to have a job in 2 years. She's like, please get a job.
I've had my wife say that exact same thing.
Yeah.
And was she super supportive? Was she like awesome? Like, was it... and we joke about this, but I'm assuming she was very happy that you were no longer wandering in the dark, that you had seen some light, not the light, but some light. And it was a little joke. Was she that's a dumb question. I was going to say, was she supportive? Probably. She seems wonderful. She married a Marine, which makes her basically some of the best people in the world, right? Because I would say the same about my wife.
She was very supportive. She was holding down. I think there was a period that she had 2 jobs. I was living on the GI Bill to go. She was very, very supportive. And anytime a new class came up, she's like, "Hey, we'll change everything. We'll make this work." Like she was a goddess. Like she made anything work. So very supportive.
That's awesome.
Mike, I want to go back a little bit to that spot where you're talking about the social worker that you meet at the VA.
Yeah.
And it makes me think about, because I wasn't in the Marines, I was in law enforcement, but I had not a similar experience, but the idea of like, this is my identity, this is what I'm going to be doing, this is my path, I have figured it out, this is my life now, and I'm giving everything to this purpose and to this life, and I'm loving it, and everything's great. And then it kind of, the bottom drops out from beneath you, and suddenly your life is left in shambles, and you have to figure out what the hell everything means, right? I went through that experience just in a different way with law enforcement. And I think about times in my life, like specific times in my life, I can go back and I can pinpoint all of these different moments in life where but like my greatest healing moments, like the moments in my life where I really needed support and I really needed somebody to show up for me, it was men. Mm-hmm. All of my like greatest moments in my life where I just got done saying, I'm going to reiterate it again because I think it's really significant, but it's like all of those moments came through having another man sit with me and just witness me and be with me and hold space for me and support me in that moment. And I think about that often because it's something that I've heard a lot before from other men. I think it's something that men, it's not that we don't need women. That's not at all what I'm, but there's a special thing that takes place when you've got another man that is willing to show up and not just bullshit with you and hang out with you and all those kind of different things that we do for each other, but really show up for you when you're in a space where you're vulnerable, when you're hurt, when you feel like, you don't know where to turn. And those are the moments that I think where men have the greatest capacity to show up and support each other. And I can, like I said, I can relate so many different moments in my life back to those spots where some man, all the way back to like childhood and, my teenage years. And it's just like all of these spots where some man showed up for me and really helped me on my path. And it was like significant help. It wasn't just like a boost and, hey, dude, I believe in you and I think you can do this. It was like sitting with me in the fucking shit and just seeing me in those moments. So I wonder if you could speak to that a little bit, what that felt like and if you can relate to that.
I didn't really make the connection that it was typically men that showed up for me that kind of moved me through those until right now. I think in retrospect, not a sponsor, but there's a book called No More Mr. Nice Guy. Have you ever heard of it?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so when I read that, that's when I started looking for the men in my life and how they were showing up and kind of seeing what they were doing. But I never looked before I got that book till right now. So sorry, that was kind of an aha moment for me. Can you tell me again what your question was?
Yeah. Damn it, did you just figure that like right now? Like just a second? Yeah. So like that's my epiphany noise. Right? Yeah.
Can you relate?
Yeah.
Do you feel like that is something that you can also like, can you see moments in your life where you had men really show up for you?
Yeah.
Not just like in, you know what I mean? But like in a pivotal moment like that he was talking about where he's got this social worker where he's really looking for, do you know what I mean?
Yeah. It's totally. And I think different men throughout, like Mr. Olson, who was one of my science teachers. Yeah. I talked about him, right?
That's a great example.
Him, and then I had Gunny Boltman. He showed up a lot for me. He kind of like saw me a little bit, knew who I was, what I was going through, and was just trying to help steer me. Really, he was trying to be bumpers in my life, and he was like, "Hey, man, you're getting a little silly. You gotta like clean that up." And I was like, "All right." And then Dave, my mom's husband, like he's really been, it was funny, like, because I didn't really even know about it. She was living with him, and I was in Iraq. And I talking to my sister, and she's like, "Yeah, well, mom's moved into her new boyfriend." I'm like, "Mom's dating?" Right? Because our stepdad, Al, my mom's second husband, he had passed away a year before, and I was like, "She's dating?" And she's like, "Yeah, she moved in with him." And my sister threatened him, like, when Ben gets back from the Marines, he's gonna fuck you up. Right. And Dave, sweet Dave. Oh, sweet Dave. Dave had a stepson that was a Marine, and he's like, "Yeah, okay, sure, man." And Dave's he's not an aggressive, like, kind of guy. I mean, you've met Dave. He's a very, very nice man, very, very calm guy. And I came home and he's like, "Well, you're not like my stepson." But no, I mean, men have definitely showed up and helped me, guide me, and my my Yoda has always been, and my Obi-Wan, those are both, they're men. Boom, boom. Star Wars.
Yeah. Star Wars. It always comes back to Star Wars. I think about it a lot because this is something that I used to do a lot of men's work. I sat in a lot of groups with men, and a lot of my healing after I got fired from law enforcement came through that avenue of being able to be supported by men, sit in space with men, and really tap into emotional vulnerability with men. So I've spent a lot of time thinking about it. And I think there's something about, because, like we just highlighted earlier in the episode, we were all raised by our moms to some extent, right? And I think that's really common where obviously, even if you come from a family where you've got both parents in the home and it's not a divorce situation, obviously we're raised by women, right? The vast majority of us are raised by women because that's typically who's doing most of the caregiving and everything like that.
That's why we know what a duvet is.
A duvet is?
Yeah, that's a Fight Club reference.
It is a Fight Club reference.
I know.
It all comes back to Star Wars and to Fight Club.
That's right.
But I think that there's some component in there where I'll do my best to kind of just share what my experience has been as I've unpacked this for myself, because my whole life it wasn't even after my parents got divorced. It was much earlier on in life where I have very clear memories of having a connection with my dad, but I was little. It was like, younger than 5 years old, small enough that I can remember like my hand in his hand and like holding my dad's hand like you would if you were a little kid going to the store, walking around, and you reach down and you grab your kid's hand. Like I remember what the feel of my dad's hand was. And then at some point, and it was very early on, that relationship and that connection with my dad was just gone. And there's a bunch of reasons why, and I've, thought about it and unpacked it and kind of processed it in different ways. But at some point along the lines, like the connection that I had with my dad where I felt safe, because that feeling of like, okay, my hand is within my dad's hand. My dad has me. He's holding me in some sense, right? And that's gone. And then I just look for it everywhere. I look for it in every man that I come across. I took that missing piece of like safety that I needed from a man, and I just dropped it right into my older brother's lap. So I immediately just looked for it in my older brother. And of course, he couldn't measure up to that, right? So then it becomes, I look for it in not just like friends, but friends' dads or other mentors in the community. And it's just like that story has played out over the course of my life, where I'm always looking for an older male role model to fill that missing void that my dad had when I was very, very, very little. And so then it makes a lot of sense to me too, where my mom obviously did a lot of loving, caring, supportive things for me, right? But there was something different about the safety that I felt in that moment, or as a young, as a child with my dad. I never felt that same sense of safety with my mom. It was a different feeling, right? A different sense of safety. And truthfully too, there was, and you mentioned it earlier in your story too, Mike, which made me think about this a little bit too, where at some point along the line as children, as a boy, we cross over this threshold, and whether we have a very, practical thing that takes place in our life that is a signifier of this, but we go from we step into this other place where it's our responsibility now to be the person that keeps things safe. It's our responsibility to take care of things. It's our responsibility to fill some other role that men typically fill. Yeah. And that happens, I think, for little boys at a very young age for a variety of different reasons. And so then it becomes again where it's like, I don't necessarily allow my mom, and this isn't all conscious stuff, right? This is all shit that, is my story over the years of processing and putting things together, right? I don't allow my mom to protect me in a sense anymore, because I'm the one that's responsible for not just protection, but also protecting myself, right? And so then there was always that little missing piece, and the true, real, raw vulnerability of being able to like set everything down so that I'm not having to hold up any facade or any, like even, there's metaphors that I've thought about it over the years where it's like I can set my shield down completely. I can literally set down all of my weapons. I can set down my sword. I can set down all of these different things. The only time that I feel like I've actually been able to do that in real profound ways is when I'm surrounded by, or not even just by men, but a man that I feel safe enough to do that in. A man that is going to protect me in the way that I felt protected by my dad all the way back when I was that little boy holding his hand and feeling that bond and that connection. And I think there's something significant about that. I think there's something special about that. But I also think that that's something that men I don't think they necessarily think about that a lot, or even just recognize that we have the capacity to create that relationship. Like there's something special about being able to do that for another man, to be able to create that space for another man, even just, even to just like, if that's the full, all the way to the end of the spectrum where, you can finally kind of fall apart in a sense and be held, even just metaphorically, in a sense of a safe place with another man. But even just like getting close to that is something that's really special that men can do for each other. And I think that as men, we touch upon it at times, and we feel safe around each other at times, and all of these kind of things. But then I don't know what happens. We get scared about it, or we get, and then we have to bring in all the other bullshit that men bring into places when we start to feel vulnerable and start to feel, that connection with one another. But I don't know if that if you can connect to that at all, if you can relate to that at all. But when you were talking about the guy that really helped you at the VA, I'm like, there's something special about men being able to help other men in some real dark, deep places. And I think it has to do with that thing of, we only really feel truly safe around other men.
Yeah, for sure. Like I definitely relate to and connect to that metaphor you gave of like putting on the armor, right? And learning to swing the sword and learning to swing the mace. Like that's the culture of what at least in the United States we put on men to kind of provide and protect. And when we're around people, like it's natural for us to move into those spaces where we're holding all the weight and burden from the armor and the chainmail and learning to just kind of survive in this battle. And there definitely is something in like listening to you. I didn't really think so much about the social worker. The person who really did that for me was my wife's brother, Tim. He we lived with him for a short period of time. Like when I was really struggling, like there was times we'd step out on the back porch and he gave me a cigarette. We'd sit out there and just kind of talk about stuff. He told me about some stuff he was going through, and like we really connected with each other. And it was then that I started to take off the armor and kind of know that I don't have to stay guarded and stay bundled up all the time. That there was a space for me. That wasn't just an expectation that I protected everyone else. And that was a big part of like when I got out of the Marines. It was my civic duty to show up and take care of my sister. And like there was also a lot of resentment. And like we didn't really get along. but the whole time I was like, no, let me take care of you. and so yeah, I can definitely see that. And yeah, finding space where we can just show up and be, to just be.
And that's why we do jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
To be in this space with other men. I'm trying to invade your space with my space. And we're gonna build a special connection.
Well, I guess that is one way to get a hug from another man.
Involuntarily sometimes. Listen, me and Craig hug a lot.
Yeah.
Not always anymore. We don't
we make a point to hug outside of jiu-jitsu.
We do. We hug outside. We hug outside jiu-jitsu more than we hug in jiu-jitsu right now.
Yeah, Ben and I don't roll as much lately, at least, just because we're so sore.
Yeah, there's it's when the old, like, and this is just my opinion of this. It's like when the old bear looks at the other old bear and is like, I ain't got time for your ass today. Right? We literally we say that to each other. We're like, I'm not dealing with you.
Yeah.
Right now.
My wrists hurt. I don't want to have to try to
love wrist
do
locks.
something with Ben.
I'm over here like, nah, man, I'm breathing heavy today. Like, I don't want your pressure on top of me. Just leave me alone.
How has therapy changed you? Because I don't think you can get into that field and not be impacted and affected by it, right? Like you said earlier too, right? You're showing up in such a, I mean, this isn't just a job. you've gone through the experiences of really deep work. You've
Yeah.
gone through some real pain in your life, right? And so you're showing up to it in a completely different way than somebody else might. And that means that it's going to impact you. It's going to affect you. It's going to change you to some degree because you're showing up with your heart. You're showing up in that space very, very differently. What does that look like for you? How has it been beneficial for you? And then I also want to talk about, I have a follow-up question rather than throw it on top. So then we get all confused. I'll just ask it afterwards.
So that in itself has been a journey. So like I told you, when I decided to go into therapy, I told my wife, and she's like, "Yes, please get a job," right? So I'm going to all the classes, and I love the social work classes, but then like all the other ones, I'm like, I'm not sure if I really want this. And there was a few days that I was planning on going home and being like, "Babe, ain't doing it. Gonna go be a welder or something." But in the middle of the class, I was like, "Wait, no." I seen that she was kind of relying on me. Like I seen that she was so eager for me to have a job. So like from that point, it was like, you know what, I'm gonna make this work. All throughout the whole thing, I kept telling myself, I'm too broken to be a therapist. I can't, like, I got too much crap going on. I got too much I'm working through. Like, also being in denial of what I was. Like, therapy field, there's a lot more women in this field than there are men. So the whole journey, I was like, wait, like, am I feminine enough to be a therapist? Like, am I in this space? Though it was kind of a challenge for me to move into this profession. It wasn't until maybe 2018 that I really leaned into being a therapist, and I was like, you know what, we're gonna do this. So I was already a therapist for a while. People kind of lean on me from my kind of leadership background from the military. So I was in management positions, but like I wasn't enjoying. By 2018, I made it something. And so that journey for me starting in 2018, I had to give space for me, and I found myself. There was another male therapist at a place I was working at. That like between our sessions, we would just sit down and talk. Like it wasn't anything big, it wasn't anything massive. It was just, hey, welcome to the job. How's life? And we'd check in, you know. So growing into this kind of profession, there was a realization that had to happen, and I can't remember where it was, but I was so worried about leaning into conversations because, like, it always had that facade of like, well, if they just knew my life, they would discount everything I said. If they just knew that I was as broken and flawed as everyone thinks they are, that they would just, like, it would be a waste of time. And once I moved past that, where it's like, you know what, like, I'm not trying to get people to be perfect. I ain't perfect. It's just giving space to just be. And when we can do that, there's so much that can just happen just by having space to be. So that journey kind of moved me in the space where I had to just be. I had to be okay with who and what I was. And that in itself is a really, like, I'd still struggle with it today. So did that kind of answer the question?
Yeah, man. Absolutely.
Okay, cool.
What's your favorite part about being a therapist?
Seeing people move through the journey. Like, initially I started out in trauma. My internships were at the VA, really connecting to people with trauma histories, men and women alike. And then I kind of moved away from trauma because I thought I was like ruining lives again, going back to that inner message. But then there was something about watching someone kind of shift. There's a moment you can't describe in words. Like you can talk all day, people can tell their stories, right? Like people get to experience it and like just really be there. But there's a moment in someone's recovery from trauma where it's like they'll be in the middle of telling their trauma, they'll be in the middle of telling their story, and then just their whole physical presence changes. It's like a switch in the middle of trauma treatment where it's like the misery's over, we're okay with who and what we are, but now we're going to author our future. And in that moment, it makes it all worth it. Every everything I do and everything I go through. It just makes it so worth it to be there.
Where can we
And
get one
just
of those
witness that.
switches? Can we buy one of those switches somewhere? Do you have to do the therapy thing? Because I've done a fair amount of therapy.
Haven't found that switch yet.
I haven't found that. Well, at the same, I've had great therapists. I've had some shitty therapists, and the worst part is I had a shitty therapist while I was in the Marine Corps, and then I got out of the Marine Corps, and the VA sent me to that same shitty therapist who now worked for the VA. And I was like, I walked in, I was like, and I looked right at him. His name was Dr. Green. I looked right at him, I was like, fuck. And he was like, all right, Mr. Tim. And I was just like, all right, let's do this. But I only went to him for a little while.
Mike, this has been so great to get to know you, dude.
Yeah, thanks. Thoroughly enjoyed
really nice time. Is there anything that you want to throw out? Anything that you want to say that maybe you didn't get a chance to say, or anything that you want to ask or talk about before we wrap up?
So I found y'all's podcast after Keith's interview, and I've been watching them. Like I'm just really grateful for what y'all are doing here. As I'm sure you can imagine, there's a few men that I'm working with to kind of rekindle relationships with men and kind of move into that space of their life, and finding your podcast was in and of itself a blessing to many of us. So I really, really appreciate what y'all are doing here.
Well, thank you, man. We appreciate that a lot.
That's that's pretty fucking cool, man. It gets me that it's a big deal to people because I'm like, I'm a fucking idiot. but
you're really not a fucking idiot.
I understand that. I just play one on TV.
You don't even play one on TV. It's so hard to own, the self-degrading nature of men to just minimize.
I feel like this is my balance. All right, I can come here and self-degrade, or what do you call it?
I don't know.
Yeah, whatever.
I can't say
right,
the word,
Mike knows what I'm talking about.
Yeah,
it's a clinical thing. But I can come here and do this, and this is just me having fun and getting to do this and being. I feel like this is more me, right? Yeah. Because this is really, but I have a real big boy job, right? And I don't get to say this stuff or I talk about this stuff, right? While I'm in my big boy job, that's I kind of have a big boy job.
You got a big boy job.
I'm about to not have a big boy job. But yeah, it's really cool. I mean, Mike and I appreciate that. It's more and more people now, right? Like my nephew, who's a much younger man than I am, up in Michigan. We were talking the other day, and he was like, "Hey, man, I've been listening to you guys' podcast, and I just appreciate everything that you guys are doing." And I'm not gonna lie, I mean, the idea of it all, I'm like, yeah. And then as we talk about it, I'm like, I mean, that's some hard shit, right? We've had a litany of emotions in this, little bit of time that we've been on, right? You were talking about your dad, holding your dad's hand, and I'm over here like, I fucking miss my dad, right? And Mike's over here talking about losing his brother, and I mean, brother, right? And that's monstrous, and your stepdad, and all these journeys, and the epiphany that you just had. And I'm over here I got dick and fart jokes, right?
Yeah, I think it's so hard as men because it's so much easier to just push away from all of these things. And I mean, it takes me back to that time period of being that little boy where it's in some ways I had to turn off all the emotionality. I had to turn off all of these different things that I was feeling inside, right? And it's as soon as I metaphorically, literally, consciously, it doesn't really matter, right? But it's when my dad left that space, and it's not that he was out of my life at that point, but in some ways where that thing left, it's I didn't have the safety anymore in my life to show up, as myself, I think. And then it's just been the thing that I've been trying to find ways to get back to over the course of my entire life. And it's stuff like this. It's, creating opportunities like this that's one of the things when we started the podcast, it was how can we create not just the podcast and all those kind of things, but it's Ben and I's relationship was just kind of brand new to some extent.
Yeah.
And it was like, how can we show what that looks like? And how can we show it in such a way where you can kind of almost follow along as our relationship deepens and builds past the point of just fucking bros hanging out, doing jiu-jitsu, laughing. We've got a lot of shit in common with each other that we can laugh about and have a really good time about. And
we look alike.
We do. I mean, we look alike, right? Obviously, right? That's apparent if you look at us. We're very similar.
Like you can do the side, you can do the side profile
right?
too. Yeah,
yeah, definitely have got. But it's like, how do we go past that level of stuff that most men never do, right? Most men stay in that place where it's like, we feel really comfortable joking around and playful and all those kind of things. And then that's wonderful. But then there's so much more underneath it. And it's like what I was saying earlier, where it's like, it almost can't come out unless you're surrounded by safe men. It's almost a thing that we don't feel safe enough to bring forth and share with people, share with women, share with our partners. You know, you said that like the vast majority of therapists, like that field is heavily dominated by women. We need good male therapists, Mike.
Yes.
We need men out there being able to show up and provide a safe place for other men to heal, to be able to process, to share. So kudos to you, dude, because it's not easy. It's not an easy field, I'm sure, to be in, but it's also not an easy space to show up in, man. Yeah. So I think you're doing really good work, I'm sure. I have no doubt.
Yeah.
Are you a good therapist? No.
Well, I was talking to myself this morning, and I seem to think I am.
Right? I'm good enough. I'm smart enough.
Looking in the mirror. You can do it. Listen, I've never looked in the mirror and said you can do it.
Well, maybe that's next week's challenge for you. A little bit of mirror work.
If I look in the mirror, I just flex.
Boom. Yeah. Definitely don't look in the mirror saying you can do it. But this morning I was doing deadlifts and looking in the mirror saying, "Don't be a bitch."
There you go. Hey man, you can't do great. You can't do epic shit with too much bitch in your heart. No.
We're trying to change things. We're trying to shift out of like.
Listen, there's a huge difference between finding a safe space. Why are you breaking shit?
We're tipping stuff over.
Oh my God. Just
getting pretty intense
breaking
in
things.
here.
This is calm down. Just get a hold of yourself. No, I mean, listen, like, honestly, I know I just said this and I use it as a joke, but it's 100% true. There is a big difference, I think, between having a safe space for men, talking about the things that are a big deal, focusing on trying to like really understand why I feel a certain way and how I got to this point, and being a bitch in the aspect of like, yeah, man, like, life's hard. Like, I totally get that. Like, I'm not telling you that it's not, there's a reason for any of this stuff, but that doesn't mean that you can just be like, I think we've all dealt with that moment of like, I'm just laying in bed. It's 10:45 in the afternoon, or that's evening, morning, whatever. Right. And like, I just don't want to do anything. And like, you've got to get past that. Right. Like you got to, therapy only works when you show up.
Right.
Yeah,
you got to show up.
You definitely got to show up, right?
Yeah, definitely. And they found through studying the brain that by doing things that you don't really want to do, your will to live actually increases. So people who don't want to do something and do it anyway have significantly less suicidal ideation. So yeah, if you're laying in bed at 10 a.m. What's up?
I thought you were just talking about like overall longevity. Like, I'm going to live to be 150 because I do hard shit all the fucking time. Right. You're like suicidal. I was like, oh, well, there we go. 72.
Yeah. To live longer, you got to eat healthy. Yeah.
Mike, thank you so much, man.
Yeah. Thank you.
This has been great.
Yeah. It's been awesome. We're gonna don't go anywhere though. We gotta push stop, but don't go anywhere.
There's a prize.
There's a big prize at the end of the episode. But thank you, Mike.
Hey guys, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this, please take a minute, like, comment, subscribe, hit that bell for notifications. And when you've got some free time, why don't you check out some of these videos right up here. Thanks so much. There's new episodes of Brave Men Dare every week, and we'll see you guys later.